Hey, welcome back, boys and girls, kings and queens, fairies and magicians. Welcome to another episode of Inside the Parenting Matrix. I'm Bryan Post, and I'm so glad to see you all again. Today, we are going to pick back up on the Atkinson family Super Nanny review with the teenagers that are a little upset and angry, and just give you more insights inside the parenting matrix so that you can break through in your home. So let's go ahead and get right to it. Let's just share the screen with you guys. Bam, bam. Boom, shakalaka. All right.
When Amanda came back over, that gave me a lot of hope that she's saying, I'm willing to work through it with my mom. Like, I want the relationship. And that meant the world to me. I love you more than anything in the world. I want to get along. Please tell me where the anger's coming from. What did I do? I don't know. I don't. Follow me, the pair of you. We used to have a really strong relationship.
So in the vein of emotional communication, this is a good example because mom asked the teenage daughter a question. She's obviously stressed out. Mom says, "What's going on? Why are you so angry?" Teenage daughter, folded arms, says, "I don't know." Looks away. So she's stressed. When you understand that stress and fear is the underlying root to negative behavior, it gives you a perspective. Now, I teach a behavioral intervention technique called the three-phase intervention, and it's called relate, reflect, relate, and regulate. So three-phase intervention. Reflect, meaning as long as the child's not at risk of harming themselves or someone else, the first thing you need to do as a parent when your child is upset is you take 3 to 10 deep breaths and you start to reflect on how you're feeling. Okay, this is very important. Once you get in tune with how you're feeling, which this slows you down automatically, it calms down your thinking, activates your short-term memory, then you relate to the child by saying first, I feel sad, scared, happy, mad, whatever it may be. How do you feel? So what you're doing is you're actually expressing your own feeling first, which is sets up a teaching dynamic, and then you're asking the child how they feel. Because in times of stress, our thinking becomes confused, distorted, or short-term memory suppressed, and one of the first things we do when we are stressed is we don't know how we feel. We get shut off from our feelings because our thinking is running 100 miles per hour. But when you reflect, number one, you're starting to calm the dynamic. Number two, when you relate by first saying, I feel such and such, how do you feel? When the child says, I don't know, then you can say, again, you honor your feelings. You say, I feel really sad right now. And I can imagine you're feeling sad too. I feel really sad, and you look like you're really angry. I really want to be able to work through this with you. You are really important to me. This is very important to me. So then what you're doing is you're taking the pressure of the communication, the pressure of the need to express off the child. You're reducing the environment. The next stage, step 3, is to regulate. As soon as you reflect and then move into relate, regulation starts to happen automatically. Now, a lot of times as adults and as parents, we get stuck in reflect. It's because of this, the moment we see a negative behavior, our amygdala causes us to want to focus in on it, and then we're not able to reflect. We're then focused on the child, and then we get upset because the child won't tell us how they feel, and then it just escalates. But in this dynamic, the little girl said, I don't know, and Joe redirects them to the picnic bench.
And then change happened, and everything was different. Okay, this is work it out. This time, it wasn't talking in anger, it was trying to have a real conversation, which Amanda and I had not had for a very long time. I think it's gotten...
Let's just back this up just a touch, because I want to look at the checklist.
I love you more than anything in the world. I want to get along. Please tell me where the anger's coming from. What did I do? I don't know. I don't. Follow me, the pair of you. We used to have a really strong relationship, and then change happened, and everything was different. Okay, this.
Now this is where we left off last episode last week. So this is the talking board. This is the way we're going to keep everything logical. This is not a logical interaction. Relationships are not logical. They are emotional. Trauma is not logical. It is emotional. Challenges between parents and children is not logical. It's emotional. So the moment we try to move this into a logical cognitive hemisphere perspective, and it's literally a hemisphere of your brain, then we're already getting off track, because ultimately the stress is going to set in, and stress is in the right hemisphere, which is the emotional brain. Stress is emotional and it is unconscious. And the moment stress sets in, it dictates to our thinking. This is why it's so important to learn to get in touch with our own feelings, what we're feeling inside, to be able to breathe and calm down ourselves, and then we talk. Because otherwise, our thoughts, our thinking is held hostage by our emotions. So let's look at number one. Number one is no cussing or insulting. Well, so I have a belief that you should listen to a child's behavior and respond to the child, not respond to the behavior. Cussing and insulting, I say there are three things. There are three pathways of emotional expression. There's attitudes, there's feelings, and their behaviors. If you can't express through your feelings, you're going to drop down to if you can't express through your attitudes, you're going to drop down to your feelings. If you can't express from your feelings, you're going to drop down to your behaviors. And you just continue as long as you continue to be suppressed. In our society, we don't like attitudes, so children have feelings. We don't accept feelings, so children have behaviors. Then children have behaviors, they don't have anywhere else to go. So behaviors must manifest in one or two different ways, by becoming angry or depressed. So it has to come out of behaviors. There's really no other choice. So when I'm looking at this, the first thing I see is no cussing or insulting. Well, no cussing or insulting. If a child is cursing or insulting, you know what that tells me? It tells me, number one, the child's stressed out. Number two, the child doesn't have any better way to express themselves or to communicate in that moment than through that expression. You know what I want to do? I want to encourage the parents to be able to look beyond their matrix, their parenting matrix conditioning that sees cussing and insulting as such a bad thing because it's just a verbal expression. See, we have all these generational imprints that tell us that cursing and insulting are bad things, when in reality, a child only curses or insults if they haven't learned any other better way to express. Now, the only way they're going to get to that better way to express is if they have an opportunity to be right where they're at. We don't want to suppress the cursing and the insulting. We don't like it, and we're not condoning it, but a child's got to be where they're at. So when a child is cursing or insulting, see the stress and the fear. Calm yourself. Reflect on yourself. Then relate to the child. Say, I can tell. I'm feeling really upset right now, and I can tell you must be upset. What's going on? So I'm not attending to the cursing. I'm not attending to the insulting. Because if I'm attending to the cursing and the insulting, I'm attending to the behavior. If I'm attending to the behavior, I'm not attending to the stress. I'm not attending to the fear, and I'm not attending to the real source of what's going on. Number two, no bad attitude or negative mannerisms. See, it's all classical inside the parenting matrix conditioning. What's wrong with a bad attitude? Nothing, unless you have decades and generations of conditioning that tells you that attitudes are not okay, that negative mannerisms are not okay. You know what they tell me? It tells me you got a stressed out and scared child. Number three, respectful of volume. I don't want to be freaking respectful of volume if I'm upset. If I've got to be respectful of volume, that means you really can't handle how I'm feeling. And that is probably a part of the feeling, a part of the problem. You can't handle how I'm feeling. That's why you keep trying to suppress me. And you know what you're trying to do? You're trying to make yourself feel better. You're not really trying to be tuned into me. Because if you're truly being tuned into me, if you truly want to know how I feel, if it truly matters to you what's going on with me, then you've got to be willing to see me right where I'm at, your teenager included. The only work that you need to do in that moment is your own self-work, calming yourself down, because in reality, if your child's giving you attitudes, if your child's giving you feelings, that's exactly what you want. because what you don't want are behaviors. So you encourage the attitudes, encourage the feelings, and you eventually get the child to work through what they're feeling with you, help them regulate, and you never have to drop down to behaviors. The problem is in our society, we're always suppressing attitudes. We're always suppressing feelings. And then children drop into behaviors. They don't have any other options other than behaviors. And then when they start misbehaving, we don't like it. We punish the behavior too. So we get stuck in the parenting matrix because we're creating this negative conditioning all the time. No talking over one another. Who's the best person to keep us from talking over one another? The adult, the regulatory figure. If we are not regulated, then we cannot keep our children from acting out. If we're not regulated, we can't help our children feel understood. If we are not regulated, we can't listen. If we are not regulated, we are regressed adolescents, and we end up talking over our children as much as they talk over us. Number 5, if you feel angry. If you feel angry, 3-minute cool down, then come back. No, anger is just a feeling. It's just a feeling state. Underneath anger is stress and fear. If I see that underneath anger is stress and fear, guess what? I'm okay with you being angry. The rub is that I've got to be able to see that underneath anger is stress and fear. That way, when you're expressing the anger, I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not scared. I'm actually encouraging it. You're really mad at me right now, and it makes me feel sad that I haven't been able to help you feel any safer. Tell me how angry you are right now. I'm angry too. I'm angry that I haven't had better communication with you. I'm angry that we're in this situation to begin with. Tell me how angry you are. You feel that? And then number 6, acknowledge what you've just heard. So after I have suppressed all of your emotional responses, which is really the doorway into your pain, then I'm supposed to acknowledge what I've just heard. Well, if it's focused on this, then I'm acknowledging a lot of upset. Unless I want you to completely suppress yourself and then say something that makes me feel better, because if you say something at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that doesn't make me feel better, then you need to take a 3-minute cool down and come back when you can communicate it in a way that doesn't threaten you. Does that make sense to you guys? You know, it probably did previously. You look at this from inside the parenting matrix and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But now, boom, mic drop.
Is work it out. This time, it wasn't talking in anger, it was trying to have a real conversation, which Amanda and I had not had for a very long time.
I think it's gotten past the point where I even know why I don't like you so much. When we're together in family situations, it's always Reese and me first. I don't know, let's just all go out to lunch, just me, Abby, and you. You know, it's never that. It's always for Reese and me.
If you knew how much I would love to do that, I would do that today, tomorrow.
Okay, now let me keep playing it.
Sounds good.
I love you, Amanda.
Why did you really do that?
Because I don't like to be touched.
But she didn't get up and hug you. She just reached out for a hand.
And in order for you to receive what you are wanting, you're going to need to just let down that wall just slowly.
Let me tell you what just happened here. Let me change this view. Yeah, you guys can see that, right? Okay.
There were great efforts between Mum and Amanda with repairing their relationship, but a lot of emotions have been bruised.
Let's look at this for just a moment. This is good. I like it.
And me first. I don't know, let's just all go out to lunch, just me, Abby, and you. You know, it's never that. It's always for Reese and me.
If you knew how much I would love to do that, I would do that today, tomorrow.
Sounds good.
I love you, Amanda.
Okay, this is beautiful. So the teenager says, why can't it just be the three of us? Because remember, this is a mixed family. So dad has kids from a previous marriage. Now they have kids together, and mom has her two teenage daughters from a previous marriage. And so the teenager just said, why can't it just be us? Why can't it just be us? Why does it always have to be everyone else? Why can't it just be back to three of us? This is a very important statement here. And what happens is that because mom wants to fix the situation, she immediately takes that as, if you knew how much I want to do that, I would love to do that. What she's missing is the emotional communication. See, and this is what happens when all we want to do is organize our communication in this really logical, rational way. The child is expressing a deep wound over being pushed away from her mother. She's expressing deep pain, although it doesn't look like that. You can see the anger in her, the upset, the fear, the overwhelm, the insecurity. She's expressing that she doesn't feel loved by her mother anymore. Mom is only attending to the thought of having lunch. There's a whole nother, an entirely different emotional process underneath this communication that needs to be happening, that's not happening in this moment, because we're organizing it all in this cognitive, rational, very safe, very secure framework of communication. What if the daughter says, mom's breathing? The daughter says, I feel like we've been pushed out. I feel like it's never us anymore. Mom feels it because mom feels the same way too. Mom feels the same guilt, and this is why mom wants to fix it so quickly. She wants to sweep this under the mat because she's got the same level of pain. And she's right there. She's right there. What if she breathes in? What if Joe says, wait, mom, I want you to hear what she just said. And Joe says to the daughter, say it again. And instead of mom saying, let's fix it by having lunch, mom says, I'm so sorry, honey. I'm so sorry, and you are so right. I feel so guilty. This has been so hard. I get so embarrassed. I don't know. I wasn't expecting this blended, I said mixed, blended family. I didn't know. I miss you. You're my daughter. You're the most important person to me ever. And I'm sorry I've not made the time for you and your sister and I to stay connected and to make you feel like that you're still special. I'm sorry, and let mom open up. Ooh, 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 ooh. Mom starts opening up like that. Teenage daughter starts to melt because she feels heard. She feels heard and she's felt. Like mom's Alan Shore talks about in Affect Regulation and the Repair of the Self, one of his amazing volumes. He talks about the work between the therapist and the patient it's the right hemisphere to right hemisphere alignment. When you get connected in that right hemisphere to right hemisphere attunement, you're communicating at a deep emotional level. And that is so important between parents and children. And we miss it so oftentimes because children can be so emotional and we force ourselves to be so cognitive that we're missing one another all the time. There's always this misattunement. This is a perfect, very subtle example of misattunement. And because Joe has a need to fix this family and make this family okay, she misses it too. And then when we miss it, guess what happens?
What did you really do?
I'd love to see the mom's face. Watch mom's face. Mom is so hurt. She's so hurt because she wants to feel better. This is a prime example. This is a prime example of us really not, I don't want to say, I don't want to discount it as though mom doesn't love this child. Mom feels guilty, she feels overwhelmed, and she wants to fix the situation. So she's moving too fast to want this little girl to feel better so she'll feel better. That's the piece. Mom wants the daughter to feel better so she'll feel better. So it's just another stressor that reduces from her life. But what happens is it's not authentic. And so when the little girl doesn't reciprocate and mom doesn't get to feel better, then mom feels rejected. And mom takes her hand away because she feels rejected. And she can't hear the daughter. So see, we're positioning the daughter to have to make the parent feel better. And that's backwards. That's backwards. That's how children grow up and accuse their parents of being self-centered and narcissistic, because the parents are always wanting the child, unconsciously, always asking the child to make them feel better because their parents demanded that of them. If you grew up in a home where you couldn't have your own feelings and you had to take care of your parents' emotions and you had to behave a certain way so your parents wouldn't feel a certain way, then you grew up in a home where you were not being felt and you were not being heard and you did not have parents who were emotionally present to you. So the inclination is to recreate the same pattern with your own children. So this is a perfect example. And now we have a therapist or family coach who's feeding into that dynamic. This is classic inside the parenting matrix stuff. Feeding into the dynamic to make the mom feel better so everyone can feel better.
I don't like to be touched.
But she didn't get up and hug you. She just reached out for a hand. And in order for you to receive what you are wanting, you're going to need to just let down that wall just slowly.
She said, I don't like to be touched. Well, the reason we don't like to be touched is because we're stressed. When we're stressed, we start shutting off the sensory pathways. Look at her eyes. She's not looking at her mom. She's looking down. She's got her arms pulled in, and she probably really doesn't even want to hear Joe, but she's containing herself enough to not get sensory activated, right? So what we're doing is we're trying to push her out of her shell so, again, we'll feel better, as opposed to connecting and getting attuned with what's going on with her. You know, this is another invitation for mom to say, honey, I'm sorry, I have not been hugging you enough. I'm sorry, I've not been loving you enough. Oh my gosh. I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better. We don't have to touch the child at this point. She's already conceded, right? But now we're asking her yet again, make us feel better.
There were great efforts between Mum and Amanda with repairing their relationship.
Child steps out of her comfort, everyone feels better, and they can go, life goes on. There's not any real emotional communication that's happened here. In this exchange, nothing really happened. This is just a different level of perpetuating the same cycle that's always been present.
But a lot of emotions have been bruised. When I come back, there's going to be more work to do. Before I left for 3 days, it was important for me to round all the family up to say goodbye. There was John and his daughter Julia, and Jen and Abby and Amanda from her previous marriage, and little Reese and Maeve from their marriage now. This is the part where I go away for several days, because you have to learn to be able to do whilst I've been gone, especially to see how Jen has got on with her teenage girls.
I know that Joe is going to call us out on the things that we haven't done right.
I think she's probably going to see some things that might be pointed out and still needing some work.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Joe.
Hello. All right, who's ready to take a look?
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right.
we've got some time today to just hang out, the three of us. So I was thinking maybe we can go and get some coffee and just hang out and chit chat. Did you notice we passed by the martial arts place that you guys used to go to? Yeah. Do you remember that I used to put a bow in your hair every time that you went? I get the image out of my mind of Abby sitting in that go-kart. Just waiting for somebody to come out, like zooming by, and everybody's zooming by. You guys, I think this was like an awesome day. I love this day. It was fun to do with you guys. It was.
This is fantastic. I love this. See, I love the outcome that came from that communication. I said nothing happened. This, I want to give Joe credit. This did happen. So mom did listen, and mom heard, and they followed through. What my concern is that they missed is the need to heal the emotional pain underneath. See, in the matrix, we have a tendency to want to operate on the surface. When we just operate on the surface, when another storm comes along, our seeds, our plants get washed right out. We want to dig deep into the roots. That's where the real healing takes place. So I don't want to discount some of these exercises because they can be very good, very useful. But the problem is that they're all on a cognitive level. They're not getting down into an emotional level where we're really having an opportunity to work with the pain and the disconnect and the suffering that has occurred in the family. That's where real healing takes place. At this level, we're just talking about behavior change. We're talking about some good feelings. But let some stress set in, and this kind of experience just can't hold up.
That's fun. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
We'll make more time tomorrow, little by little.
That's cool.
Three Musketeers, here we go. Enjoy? I just can't tell you how much I love that time, even that small period of time.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Do you feel it from the girls as well?
Oh, felt positive all around. I mean, it was like we were back 6 years ago. The conversations we used to have, everybody laughing and talking and giggling.
And the point is, it doesn't matter what you do, it's just spending time. You know, that's what's important. It's very lovely to see.
I gotta take a ride. You're gonna stay here. I'm gonna be right back, honey.
Say bye. See you later. Look at Reese. What a good girl
Good
she
girl,
is.
Reese.
Oh my goodness. I was just going to sit down and have a talk with Reese about how absolutely amazing she's being.
Good job. Good job, honey.
Well done, the pair of you.
Went really well.
Why do you think it worked?
We knew that we didn't need to feed into the drama. We needed to just be very easy departure, have her occupied with something else. It was great. It was amazing.
Absolutely fantastic when you think about how it was in the beginning.
Yeah, it was.
Right, let's move on to these warnings.
I don't want you sitting on the counter. I don't want you.
I would be curious to know, I think that was, yet again, that was great. I'd be curious to know, why does dad feel the need to continue to let the little girl know every time he's got to leave? And I believe that we can, as I talked about in the last episode, that we can practice this separation, anxiety dynamic, and get the same results without all of the threatening and the punishing that comes along with the emotional expression. Because the emotional expression is not the bad thing. It is, how do we communicate through it and work through it and get to the other side of fear? So I'm just curious as to why he feels the need to continue to show up and, kind of create a dynamic. It feels like there's something else going on.
You're sitting on the counter. I don't want you sitting on the counter. Go inside.
Right, straight away, what was wrong with that? When you give a warning, what do you do and you didn't do it there?
I'm standing way above her.
Yeah, and what else?
She's facing the other way, and I'm talking to the back of her instead of, I should be face to face with her, and she should be looking at me.
Correct.
Yep. I'm going to tell you something. Here's your warning. Here's your warning. If you go up there again, I told you no counter. If you go up there again, you're going to go in timeout. Reese, it's too windy. We're not going to open it. Close it, Reese.
No.
Reese, close it. If you open it again, you're going in timeout. Open it again and you're going in timeout. Did you understand me?
Busted. That's not good. That's not good.
It's not good.
You know what you're supposed to be doing. You're making choices not to do what's right.
Admittedly, I know I'm not good at this. So for me, this is a new thing, and I'm having a real hard time grasping it.
But you are labeling, you are putting a label on yourself. You're giving yourself an excuse. Discipline, John, kids, and you've gone, oh, I'm no good at that, and you've ticked it off. You know, instead of looking at it as, okay, this is something I need to learn, and I will learn this because it's necessary, and the children are going to benefit from this as well. We're not out of the woods yet. There are a few things that I need to make sure you've got underneath your belt before I leave.
Okay.
So.
I don't want you sitting on the counter. I don't want you sitting on the counter. I don't want you sitting on the counter. Go inside.
Right, straight away, what was wrong with that? When you
bring
up the tears.
We were extremely close, but we're losing that connection.
Why do you keep going on about it?
All right, I'm gonna go clean up, and I'm gonna be quiet.
Good.
And talk.
Good.
Face to face with her, and she should be looking at me.
Correct.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you something. Here's your warning. Here's your warning. If you go up there again, I told you no counter. If you go up there again.
See the sensory activation and sensory overwhelm? So what Joe's trying to do is trying to teach dad how to set limits with the child and to maintain those limits and not give in. All very good stuff. Parents need to be able to set limits. But it's the way we go about it that's going to ultimately make all the difference on this child's ability to learn internal control versus external control. Inside the parenting matrix, the focus is always on external control. This is that dynamic, external control, as opposed to teaching the child internal control. So and you can tell the child can't learn in this moment. She's already stressed out. See how she's trying to reduce her sensory activation? She's yelling to not hear dad. She's pulling away from him. She's not looking at him. So we've got at least 3 different pathways she's trying to shut down to not be engaged in what it is that he's trying to get her to do. At this point, ultimately and ideally, dad would just cut off the fire, or he'd turn it down on simmer. He'd pick up the little girl and he'd move her into the other room, and he would sit down with her, and he would be with her for a minute, or he'd get her redirected doing something different. She's too young to be able to hear what he's telling her to do. So he has to use his regulatory ability to create regulation for her somewhere else. And he can also stop talking. This is something I really like to use with little kids. You stop talking and just start using your body. And you just get present right in the moment. Take her off the counter. She climbs back up. Take her off again. There's no more talking. And you just continue the repetition. He can keep cooking, but she's stressed. So any amount of talking is just going to overwhelm her even more. So he's just going to redirect her. And he's going to do it with his physical being, but without any words. He's just going to move her. He's just going to keep doing that. And she's finally going to get regulated enough to be able to do what he asks. Or he can ask her to do something else. So there are a couple of things we can do when we're just flexible in this dynamic.
If you go up there again, you're going to go in timeout.
See what happens now is he's threatening her, and then he's not following through. So it sets a precedence for her. This is the problem with limits, parental guilt. The only reason parents don't set effective limits is because of their guilt. So they eventually give in, and then what it does is it establishes a precedent for the child that if they'll just continue pushing, then eventually they're going to get their way and everything's going to be okay.
Reese, it's too windy. We're not going to open it. Close it, Reese.
No.
Reese, close it. If you open it again, you're going in timeout.
Another example, he could have saved himself the threat, went over, picked her up, sat down, put her in his lap, just held her, rocked her, tell her how much he loves her, and just tell her that that's not safe, and then leave it alone. We're not using any words at all. Just go. She's maybe 4, but she's like a 2-year-old right now. She's activated, she's worked up, she's not hearing, she's not regulating very well. So just use her physical presence. But again, it's either a combination of parental guilt, or it's just he's in his own state of stress and hyperarousal and not interested in really moving other than just using his words. But again, he uses the threat, and then that becomes yet again meaningless, and another repetition for her to just continue doing it for a little longer, and she gets her way.
Open it again and you're going in timeout. Did you understand me?
Busted. That's change that.
These Best Western? What does that mean? So, John, is there a particular name that you give somebody who's learning to drive?
Student driver?
Right.
Yeah.
So, what does normally a student driver need when they're learning?
Time to practice.
So that's what we're going to give you.
Okay.
We're going to give you time to practice with all of the kids. I gave Dad a little exercise to take his girls out for a walk so that he could step up and give these girls time out if they misbehave. We also gave him a little T-shirt just to remind him that he is a beginner and it's okay. But I tell you what, if he doesn't shift out of neutral, things won't change.
You guys ready to go for a walk? Okay. As soon as we got out of the driveway, Maeve started to cry. Come on. Come on. Maeve, you have to walk. Maeve, you have to walk. You have to walk. Maeve, you have to stop crying. If you don't stop, Maeve.
Three Musketeers.
Oh,
We were extremely close, but we're losing that connection.
You didn't listen to Daddy, and you're going to stand here for 2 minutes, okay?
Sure enough, Dad followed through. He did.
So the walk gets ruined. Why not? So see, it's almost like defeating the purpose. You're setting up practice, but then you're also intentionally fostering misattunement in the family. So you're intentionally fostering Dad not being connected to the child's emotional needs. Why not just carry the child? Right? Then you've got all your daughters. They're all feeling good. They're all happy. Everyone's being connected. You're feeling like an awesome dad. Why do we have to instigate the stress in the separation of relationship? It's because we're operating inside the parenting matrix.
Did a really great job. And I believe this man is now realizing, yeah, I can do it.
Are you sorry?
Yeah.
Next time Daddy tells you to walk, are you going to walk? Give me a hug.
This child's 2 years old. You know, we're asking her if she's sorry. Her brain is not even on track yet to be able to regulate her own emotions. She really doesn't know what the hell Dad's talking about. All she's realizing is that Dad has the potential to be a threat. This is such a classic parenting approach, and this is why when children become adolescents, they completely rebel, because or they go along with all the rules, don't rebel at all, and then they grow up and become adults with high anxiety and depression because they have no voice. So, you know, it's either not being able to have a voice or it's feeling completely overpowered. But you go to these extremes with these small children. We treat them like adults. They're still small. She's closer to being a baby than she is a teenager. And then we justify it with these really disturbing perspectives like, are you sorry? Oh.
Discipline is good, and setting those boundaries is very important for structure in our house. I'm going to practice being more assertive, not giving them 2 and 3 and 4 or 5 chances.
And notice how now insecure she is. She's coming back to him for more picking up and more hugs when he could have given her the picking up and the hugs without planting all of the seeds for insecurity.
I'm going to work on that in the future.
Mum has made tremendous progress with her teenage daughters, but there is a lot of pain, hurt, anger, and unless we really get to the bottom of this, it really won't get any better. This book is going to...
So just based on what I said earlier, that's where I would have started. So we're, you know, a couple weeks later wanting to now discuss the pain and get to the pain and hurt, where we could have saved this family and these children time by being focused in on that later, by really getting into the pain and to the emotion. But let's see how the nanny deals with pain and emotion.
Take you on a journey. I wanted to give these girls the opportunity to write down on paper what they were feeling inside. I mean, they've never been given the opportunity to be heard.
When we were together and it was just us three, I felt like everything was at peace. Once she found John, I felt that I turned invisible and was no longer there. My mom now had John, and she was happier. I felt not as strong, and something in my heart was different, and that was never resolved.
I wrote that I was jealous and unsure because I didn't know what was going to happen next. I felt unequal because maybe the little ones needed more attention than I did. And I felt quiet and unheard because I missed the old times.
Why didn't you ask us if it was okay if you married John?
I just took it for granted that you guys would be as happy as I was when I married him. I didn't necessarily feel like I need to ask your permission, but I do think that I should have.
Talk to us.
Yeah, I guess I should have done it better than I did. Sorry.
My mom has so many emotions that I never even paid attention to and I didn't care about. After everybody's emotions had simmered down a little bit, I wanted to draw back the focus on the
Joe wants those feelings to simmer down. Big Papa wants those feelings on boil. I want them out. I want them out. This is not enough. It's fantastic for what this family has been going through, but it's not enough, and it's nowhere nearly as much as what you have the ability to do. Mom could go sit on the couch between the daughters. She could put her arms around them. She could say, I'm sorry. She could cry, and she could say, I missed it, and I missed you guys, and it was special, and I'm sorry, and I'm sad, and they could pull into her, and they could cry. They could freaking cry, and they could let it out. No simmering emotions back down. Boil those suckers. Overflow that pot and let it out. We do too much suppressing emotion within the matrix, and it just builds and builds and builds until the next time when we can't contain it.
future. Right, let's have a good old chat and talk about our next chapter. Where are we going? What are we doing, girls?
Now we're chatting. Now we're back to being cognitive. We're back to talking. Guys, if you can't see the importance of emotional expression and deep emotional honoring at this point, I don't know what else I can say. We're missing so much. This is great. It's all nice. It feels good. It's wonderful for TV, but we are missing so much potential healing for this family. And let me tell you where it's coming from. Where it's coming from right now is from the family coach. The nanny is not good with feelings. The nanny does not like all those emotions. Therefore, Joe cannot support mom to go into mom's feelings, and mom cannot support her children to go into their feelings. If you're a therapist, this comes back on to you as a therapist. This comes back on to me. If my role is to help this family dig deeper into their emotions and I feel uncomfortable with emotions, I'm going to shut it down. This is very important, and it's why we need to do our own work as healing professionals. We've got to be more willing to go into our own pain and get comfortable with our own pain so we can help other people get comfortable with their pain. We keep wanting people to talk about stuff without realizing that your thoughts are generated by your emotions. And if we do not get people to get into their feelings and get into their emotions, then we're just scraping the surface over and over and over again and just try to make one another feel better until it gets bad again.
Well, I think we should have more conversations. Mm-hmm. I want you to...
There's nothing wrong with this. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with this communication, but there's not been enough emotional healing work go on and take place in order for this to be able to stand the test of time. It takes two things to change the brain: emotional impact and repetition of relationships and environments. There's no emotional impact here, and because there's no emotional impact, there's probably not going to be much repetition, because there's too many children. It's going to get stressful, and it's no longer going to hold the priority. The children are going to go back to isolating and being depressed. Mom's going to go back to being anxious and micromanaging everything, and then this is all going to be lost.
Trust us more and know that we're not going to do wrong things.
Yeah, I'll try to do that. This old chapter, new chapter exercise with Amanda and Abby is something that I will never in my entire lifetime forget.
How about you try gymnastics?
Like go to a park and try to like cartwheel around and stuff? Really?
To like break a neck.
I'll try it. It's impossible to put into words. What it did was it started to give me my daughters back. And that's the greatest gift ever.
I see people walking down the streets with their family and they have such great relationships, and if I could just do that with my mom, that would be awesome. This is actually where things are going to change.
This family really have made a concerted effort to come together.
That's fantastic. And again, that's all really, really good. I don't want to discount that at all. That I know that felt really good to everyone, but what I'm trying to get you to understand is that that is still operating inside of the parenting matrix, because it is still very cognitively based, and there's not enough attunement and honoring of the emotions and the stress and the pain, because these children probably are still grieving the loss of their family of origin. So they're probably still grieving the loss of their mom and dad's relationship, much less having to get over that and be accepting of this new family. So we haven't even touched on that. None of that's been discussed. And then we don't know any feelings about, how they feel about the dad, and the new dad's ability to come in and support them. So, a lot of this, obviously, we don't get to see. We kind of boil it down into this little framework of time, so we don't get to see a lot of the stuff going on and taking place. But we started this segment with a separation between how dad parents and how mom parents, and we're ending the segment on how dad parents and on how mom's parenting. And there's still separation in the family, and that's probably the bigger challenge that's going to lead to future drama than anything else. This has not been made to be a family. There's still a lot of disconnection and going to be a lot of misattunement between what goes on, because now mom feels a little bit more significant and secure with her daughters. She's going to be even more protective. Dad is now feeling a little more connected and secure with his daughters. He's going to be even more protected. And then he's got a daughter that hasn't even been in this scenario. So that's it, guys. It's just another opportunity for us to see, how things operate, how things work inside the parenting matrix, and just for us to be able to have another framework, another perspective on what is so common in society today and in families today. We just don't have an opportunity to look at the nuances, to really look at the subtleties of the way we relate in families. And families can be there can be so many dynamics. They can be so filled with different shifts and energies and communication patterns and personalities. So families can be so full of different unique little variables. And when we try to just framework it into one way that makes everyone comfortable, one way that makes everyone feel safe, we're usually just operating at the tip of the iceberg. And where we want to be is underneath. We want to be down at the bottom. That's where all the good stuff is. So thank you again one more time for joining me for another episode of Inside the Parenting Matrix. God bless you, and I'll see you next week.